Listen to me. If there was a wise man who would ever think of this, they would say in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. For I am the man himself.
Happy Sunday afternoon, guys, and what is going on? This is the Club of the Man 1993, and I'm back here for the 33rd review in this WWE 24 review series, as we are now on WrestleMania 37 Night 1. That's right, the WrestleMania 37 24 behind the scenes videos was split up onto two shows. I think because, of course, they not only wanted to, dive into some behind the scenes on some of the wrestlers who had big moments at this show, but also the fact that there was more that happened, of course, on night one behind the scenes, with this being the first live event WWE had that allowed fans to attend. Limited amount, but allowed fans to attend since the beginning of the pandemic. I believe it was exactly 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day from night one of WrestleMania 37. And because of that, they split it up into two parts. Of course, also, this was also the second WrestleMania to be a 2-night special. After WrestleMania 36 was split into 2 nights at the beginning of the pandemic. So it touched on kind of like that first, and then a couple of like behind the scenes stories. It didn't feel like it was quite as many. It was only really 3, somewhat of a 4th one, but I feel like we're going to kind of get back to what we did kind of have in the original WrestleMania behind the scenes 24s when we get to night 2 of WrestleMania 37. This was the only WrestleMania, though, that they did 2 24 documentaries on for each night, of course. After there's only WrestleMania 38, the only other WrestleMania they've done a 24 special on after that since, as we only have just a handful left. Anyway, to talk about WrestleMania 37. So, it took place in April 2021 at Raymond James Stadium, where WrestleMania 36 was supposed to happen. So you have it still here, and I think there was only, it allowed, 25,000, to attend the event, because there was still limited amount of people you're allowed to have in buildings as we were getting out of the pandemic during this time. So, of course, emphasizing that, WWE definitely did miss having their fans in the audience was a big missing part to the shows. As even though at this time there were not some good shows going on for sure in WWE for sure. This was definitely some of their down periods for sure. But there were some stories that were interesting heading into WrestleMania 37 for night 1, of course, we had. The first one they talked about was Cesaro. We all know that Cesaro, when he was in WWE, he was definitely one of the most underutilized wrestlers that Vince McMahon just never understood and never gave him the proper push he should have gotten. He should have been a main event player, and he should have been winning a world championship. That, unfortunately, though, never happened. But this was during a time where his contract was coming to an end, and this is at the time where Vince was, although he was releasing a ton of talent, was trying to save some talent from going to AEW. So we all know Cesaro did sign a 1-year deal, I believe it was, and stayed with the company for 1 more year, and then left in 2022. But he was kind of getting somewhat of a push at the beginning of 2021. So much so that I remember thinking he could have maybe won the Royal Rumble, or even won the Elimination Chamber. None of those happened, though, but he was in both of those that had strong performances. But he was rewarded with a singles match against Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. And this was Cesaro's first singles match in WrestleMania. They went back and talked about, his journey there, how he was in Switzerland, and at the time, a lot of people overseas didn't have many opportunities to get to wrestle. So he made his way over. I believe he signed to OVW, I think, or FCW, one of the two, in like 2010, I want to say. And then I think he got called up in like 2012. And he got a run with the United States Champion when he was Antonio Cesaro. And then eventually he got thrown into basically a tag team specialist. He tagged with Jack Swagger in the Real Americans. He also briefly was a tag team with Tyson Kidd, which would have been very fun. Unfortunately, that got cut short because of Tyson Kidd's career-ending injury. Had a few little moments of singles pushes, but he mentioned, of course, that even during all the times, going through all the tag team partners he did, all the great acts he did, he, of course, talked about his time with Sheamus when they were the Bar, and how great of a tag team that was. They always acknowledged that there was the Cesaro section. Fans were always believing him and were behind him. So they're making this WrestleMania moment for him happen. And this is kind of at the point where it's like, hey, you've always wanted a shot to show that you're the best. Go out there and prove it. That was basically, the objective of the match he had with Seth Rollins. And by far, had it not been for Bianca and Sasha stealing the show on night one, that would have definitely been the match of the night for night one for me. That match with him and Seth Rollins was just outstanding. They basically took the cuffs completely off Cesaro that night. I still will not forget when I popped when he did that freaking UFO. That when he was like put the arms out and whatnot, like it basically was just like, hey, I could have done this all this time, guys, basically. And he capitalized big time, and it was just a huge, huge moment for him at WrestleMania, and just how grateful he was. It led to him getting his one and only one-on-one world title shot at the next pay-per-view, WrestleMania Backlash 2021, where he knocked it out of the park. Unfortunately, though, after that, when he basically re-signed him, they basically just slowly pushed him back off to the side. And then he left the company in 2022 and went to AEW, of course. But that was that story. The other one, which will have me tie into like the other behind the scenes stuff, was Bobby Lashley. Now Bobby Lashley had just won the world title like a month before WrestleMania. He was the United States champion at the end of 2020 and going into 2021 when he dethroned Apollo Crews right after SummerSlam. And he told his story of getting to the top. This is his first match headlining as a world champion for WrestleMania. Originally, of course, was in the Army, and he had a goal being in the Olympics. He basically was kind of like in the same path that Kurt Angle was before he started his career. And he was all set to basically get towards the Olympics, but then, and he's told the story before in other interviews, so I knew about this before I saw this documentary. There was one time he was in a bank during a bank robbery, and as he's trying to get down and avoid the bullets, he hurt his knee. He had to have double knee surgery, and that basically killed his chances of getting into the Olympics. But when one door shuts, another one opens. We'll get to that. We get to Bianca Belair's story in a moment here. He had kept in touch with Kurt Angle, and Kurt Angle had talked Bobby Lashley into coming to WWE and into professional wrestling, which he agreed. I believe he debuted on SmackDown in 2005, and he was mostly an ECW guy his first run around when it was WWE's ECW. Of course, he did win his first. I think he won his first ECW world title at December 2006, which I'm still being told is one of the worst shows WWE ever produced. And that was also the match where, of course, they screwed over CM Punk. Vince wanted Bobby Lashley. And he had a few other moments as well, like when he feuded with Umaga, with the billionaires in your corners, with Donald Trump and Vince McMahon, and a few other things. And then they didn't really go into why, but then he left the company. He was released in 2008. And he went away for 10 years. He of course, did go to TNA. He did also focus on MMA as well. And I believe he went 15-2 in his boxing career. Kind of just to help him, get in a better mindset, just freshen up, and wait for the right time to come back. And sure enough, when he felt ready to come back, he called Triple H, and Triple H brought him back, and he came back the night after WrestleMania 34 in 2018. Took him a bit, of course, to get going, of course, but after some rough hiccups, like his horrible babyface run when he first came back in, taking a little bit of time to develop as a heel, but then, of course, when they finally put him with MVP in 2020, that's when it took off for him. And, of course, they did briefly address the Hurt Business and how people love the Hurt Business, but, of course, this is at the time when they pulled the plug on the Hurt Business. Vince McMahon, that was a huge mistake. But then they gave Bobby the world title on the March 1st edition. After the story was he was United States champion, he dropped it at Chamber to Matt Riddle, and then Miz paid him to help him cash in on Drew McIntyre. In return, though, Miz had to give Bobby a shot for the world title, which of course Miz was trying to avoid, but eventually he got it, and he won the world title. And he took on Drew McIntyre, which was the opening match of night 1 of WrestleMania 37. Now, before I get to the match itself, this is where I will address also what happened before the show started. So, in the midst of, all the excitement from the fans, from the superstars who want to be back out in front of a crowd, especially Drew McIntyre, I still remember feeling so bad for Drew McIntyre, who had been through what he had been through when we learned back in his 24 special, just to get his WrestleMania moment in front of no fans. And then obviously he was going into this WrestleMania, opening the show, and then the show got delayed due to bad weather. Yes, that's right. WrestleMania 37 Night 1 got delayed a half an hour due to bad weather. There's even worries that they may not be able to get the show in at all, which would have been, of course, absolutely horrible. And that's where a lot of people say, well, maybe it should still be held in the stadium, but one where you can have a closed roof. Honestly, if it's a trend that keeps up, that may not be a bad idea for sure to do. Of course, they've done other events like in recent years, like in Cleveland or MetLife or in Philadelphia. They did it as well. So, it's still doable, but you probably got to do it in a place where you're not going to get a lot of rain, but that's no guarantee, of course, at all. And, of course, that just, messed with a lot of people's emotions, especially, Drew McIntyre, again, who had been waiting to have his moment in front of fans. He got robbed of it last year. He was of anyone who was excited to be in front of the fans, it was definitely him. But then, of course, the show went on. The moment that, the weather let up, they were able to go back out there. I think they did show when Samoa Joe was in the rain poncho on commentary. But yeah, Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre did kick off the show. Of course, Drew was all pumped up because of being in front of the fans again. And I still felt bad. I did feel like Drew should have gotten this title win at first, but it was Bobby's time. Drew did his work. It was time. It was Bobby's turn now. So Bobby winning that match, I was not opposed to at all. I just still had that soft spot for Drew at the time. Let me tell you what, though, because they did continue their feud into the summer, and they did pull the plug on it just in time. Because I felt like, and a lot of people felt like, they were starting to overexpose Drew McIntyre to the point where fans were starting to turn against him. But luckily, they stopped before he got Roman Reigns, if that makes any sense. But yeah, that match was outstanding to open up the show. Drew was lined up for the Claymore, I remember, but then that one little distraction from MVP, just that one little head turn, is what cost him the match. And Bobby Lashley did retain in his first world title match at WrestleMania. And Drew McIntyre, of course, had an awesome showing in his first WrestleMania in front of fans since becoming the main eventer. We were talking about Cesaro and Seth Rollins. They more so just highlight a bunch of other different things throughout the show. Before we got to the main event of night 1, the only other match they talked about a little bit, but not as much, was, of course, the tag match with Bad Bunny, Damian Priest, Miz, and John Morrison, and how good that went. We all know that they basically threatened Damian Priest with his job if he didn't make this work, because Bad Bunny was the more important star, when, of course, Bad Bunny wasn't really a true wrestler. But obviously, he's been one of the best celebrity stars to become a wrestler, and he knocked it out of the park, and it was freaking awesome for sure. So that was a success there. But then, of course, the last story, which involved the main event of WrestleMania 37 Night 1, was this classic match with Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. Now, I learned a lot more about Bianca in this documentary. Some struggles I didn't know she dealt with. I knew she was an athlete. I knew she was married to Montez Ford. I knew this was the first women's main event match of color to main event WrestleMania 37. Getting those heritages in there definitely, does set a good example for like a Bianca or even like a Cesaro and like other superstars from different countries, different nationalities who don't get the opportunities as much, hadn't had the opportunities as much, and whatnot. And so this is a big moment. And also, of course, it was a rising star moment for Bianca Belair as well. So Bianca's story, I didn't know much of her story, besides that she was an athlete, went as far as this. Growing up, Bianca wasn't really a wrestling fan. She knew of wrestling because of her brother. And she knew of some of the big names that were her inspirations. But she never really thought of wrestling being like a career for her. She was an athlete, though, in the athletics, big into like track and field and gymnastics. And she was desiring to be a track star. But then when she got like into her like late teens, early 20s, she had some struggles. I didn't know that Bianca actually did suffer from bulimia because she was trying to keep her weight down to be able to be even faster. And it eventually did lead to her having a lot of mental health. Definitely some depression. I think she was in a psych ward. And yeah, she went through some pretty dark times. And I was never aware that happened for Bianca. And then, of course, she realized that the one thing she loved, unfortunately, was actually tearing her down. So, like with Bobby Lashley in the Olympics after his knee injury, he had to close one door and open up another. And eventually, she knew that she still wanted to do something involving athletics. And that's when Mark Henry recruited her into the Mae Young Classic and gave her a tryout. Like, okay, you know of wrestling, but you're athletic as hell, and this could be something that could work for you. And Bianca didn't really know the sport of wrestling too much, but she took what she could apply and had others guide her to help her, become the superstar she is today. One of those men being, of course, her husband, Montez Ford. He sat her down, watched a bunch of WrestleMania matches with her, and was like, now, what's the story behind this? And what's the story behind that? And all that stuff that he was trying to help her, develop a character and whatnot. Bianca, of course, was in the first Mae Young Classic, and she eventually got signed to a contract, as, of course, Triple H told her backstage, you have no reason to be as good as you are. And we do forget, Bianca kind of took a little bit of a backseat at NXT. She was a heel the whole time. She had the undefeated gimmick, just a cocky heel, never won a women's championship. But on the main roster, she has definitely, excelled that and become a bigger star than most of the women she took a back seat to in NXT. She got called she was, I think, in one of the women's WrestleMania Battle Royales. She already had one good appearance in the Royal Rumble for the 2021 Rumble. And she won the 2021 Rumble. She made her main roster debut at WrestleMania 36 in a tag match with the Street Profits. And I think it was Andrade and Austin Theory, because Austin Theory had to replace Angel Garza because Angel Garza was sick at the time. And then, of course, she won the Women's Rumble. And, this match with her and Sasha meant a lot for many reasons. It was women, people of color main eventing the WrestleMania of 37, Night 1. And they were all both calm and cool. But then the moment that bell rung, they got emotional. And they put on, in my opinion, by far, the best match Probably, well, one of the best matches I've ever seen for women. It didn't have, of course, the same exact story as it, but the setup of the match, the flow with it, gave me Sasha and Bayley vibes from NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 1. I would probably say that match is still a hair better than this one, in my opinion, but this one was history. These were two women who were given the opportunity to take what, that match meant to them for many standpoints and knocked it way out of the park. And if it wasn't for the triple threat on night 2, may have almost stolen the show for the whole weekend for WrestleMania. Bianca Belair, of course, did win the championship, and it was a very, very happy ending to night 1. We all knew Roman Reigns was retaining against Daniel Bryan and Edge on night 2, so that was kind of like the happy ending for WrestleMania, as Bianca Belair did dethrone Sasha Banks in a WrestleMania classic of a match. Although, could make an argument, was this match as good as the one she just had last week at WrestleMania 41 with Io and Rhea? I don't know. We will have to wait and see. But still an outstanding match and an amazing way to end night 1 of a great opening pay-per-view for night 1 of WrestleMania 37. But yeah, that's my review for night 1. Again, I thought it was well done to talk about some stories, but also like the emotions of like coming back to fans, and of course how the rain delay kind of had an impact on it as well. So a very well done night 1 WrestleMania. I feel like though for night 2s, we will kind of get back to, the flow of what we got from the previous WrestleMania ones. I could be wrong because I haven't seen it yet. But yeah, and then we will go from there. So we have WrestleMania 37 Night 2 left, then Royal Rumble 2022, WrestleMania 38, then the Damian Priest one. Then we're done with this series until another 24 comes out, which I still hope they do continue because these are really, really good documentaries for sure. But guys, that's my thoughts on WrestleMania 37's Night 1's 24. What are your guys' thoughts on this documentary? Leave your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. Slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on our channel. Follow me on Twitter as well at The Club with the Man 93. You can also follow me on TikTok and Instagram at The Club with the Man 1993. And until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch you all later. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and do not forget, in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. And for I am the man himself. And that is not just an opinion, my friends. That is a fact of life. Yeah!